Welcome back to MHS Midnight Horror Stories. I know that many of you come to these videos as a gentle way to unwind before drifting off to sleep. So, before you close your eyes tonight, could I ask you for one small favor? Just leave me a quick interaction, a comment, a like, or maybe share where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Little actions like that help YouTube recognize the content and spread it to more people who might enjoy it. My current goal is to reach around 300 likes within the first 24 hours. Now then, let's step into tonight's chilling stories together. I have been married to Kane for 6 months. We met on a dating app and we got married after knowing each other for a year. He works as a software engineer and I am a graphic designer. We both work from home, so we have a lot of time together. Our life is pretty calm. I thought I had found the right man to spend my life with. For last year's Thanksgiving, we went to Kane's parents' house in the suburbs for dinner. This is the holiday when my in-laws' family gathers the most. We arrived around 6 p.m. Kane's older brother and his wife had already gotten there. They have 2 small children who were running around in the yard. My mother-in-law was very happy to see us. She pulled me into the kitchen to help my sister-in-law prepare things and catch up on some gossip. My father-in-law was entertaining a few early relatives. Around 7 o'clock, enough relatives had arrived. Dinner was fun with about 20 people. We sat around the long wooden table, talking about our jobs and future plans. Kane was very attentive to me because this was my first Thanksgiving with his family. I felt pretty comfortable, and the food was great. I felt the warm, close family atmosphere. After we cleared the dinner plates, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law brought out the pumpkin pies. They were still slightly warm and smelled wonderful. My mother-in-law proudly introduced it, saying my sister-in-law had spent the afternoon preparing them. I helped my mother-in-law and sister-in-law pass the slices out to everyone. When it was my turn, my sister-in-law handed me a piece herself. "Try this and see if it tastes good to you." I thanked her and took the first bite. The flavor honestly tasted as good as any high-end restaurant pie I had ever eaten. I took a second, slightly bigger bite. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through the roof of my mouth. I immediately spat the piece of pie out into my napkin, surprising everyone. In the pie piece, I saw something shiny under the lights. It was a needle. It was about 2 knuckles long. The sharp tip was still stuck with a bit of whipped cream and some blood. My hand was trembling as I held it. Kane turned to me and quickly snatched it out of my hand. Everyone gasped in shock. A few people rushed to check on me, and others started inspecting the pieces of pie they were eating. The children were also stopped from eating so their plates could be checked. "Are you okay? How did this even get in the pie?" I shook my head, unable to answer him because my throat was hurting badly. I could clearly taste the metallic, bloody flavor filling my mouth. Suddenly, my mother-in-law practically screamed. "What did you just say?" Everyone turned their attention toward her. Standing next to her were a few other relatives and my sister-in-law. She backed away. The uncle standing next to her also spoke up. I heard it too. She said, "You should have swallowed it." The air in the room froze. Kane jumped up, walked toward his sister-in-law, and yelled angrily, "What did you do to my wife?" My mother-in-law blocked the sister-in-law, her voice demanding that she stay right where she was. Kane's brother walked over, his face completely confused. I called for my husband in a weak voice. He immediately pulled me up to take me to the hospital. I heard fierce arguing as we got out to the car. The warm room from before now sounded like a battleground. Kane drove me away. In the emergency room, the doctor examined my injury. Luckily, it wasn't too deep, but it had caused a pretty long cut. The doctor disinfected the wound and gave me pain medication. When we got home, it was almost midnight. Kane opened his phone and read a bunch of texts from his mother. He showed me the phone. My mother-in-law recounted everything that happened after we left. In front of the whole family, my sister-in-law had confessed. Yes, I did it. She said she couldn't accept that Kane was being tricked and having his life ruined by me. She called me a barren woman because we had only been married for 6 months and didn't have a child yet. She claimed I had hidden the truth to trap Kane into marriage. I was too shocked to say anything. Kane had always been by my side and was very supportive. In the following days, my mother-in-law called many times to check on me. She said she was forcing my sister-in-law to go to counseling. Kane's brother also called to apologize on behalf of his wife. Kane was furious. He started looking for jobs in a different city. Within 2 weeks, we'd moved to a small apartment on the West Coast, nearly 300 miles from his parents' house. The wound in my throat slowly healed, but the pain when swallowing lasted for a whole month. One night, when the wound was almost completely healed, I asked Kane about his sister-in-law. He told me he was quite surprised by her change too. She had always been gentle and caring before. He couldn't understand why she would do something like that. I didn't say anything more and never brought up my sister-in-law again. A wife's intuition let me guess the hidden motive behind her actions, but I decided it was better to let the matter drop. Since that day, I haven't contacted my sister-in-law. We still make time to visit my in-laws, but we make sure to avoid overlapping schedules with my brother-in-law's family. Every Thanksgiving that passes, when I see pumpkin pie, I remember the taste from that year. Sweet, rich, and the faint flavor of blood in my throat. This is a true story. It all started when Ethan asked me to go camping. He said we needed a trip to relax after finals week, to find peace with God out in nature. We had been dating for over a year, and he always respected my decision to save myself for marriage. He came to church with my family every Sunday. Everyone loved him. We set off on Saturday morning in Ethan's pickup truck. He told me about his plan to start a charity fund after graduation and other projects in the rural area. I listened and felt so proud of him. Then suddenly he stopped the car. He said he saw something strange by the side of the road. Ethan told me to stay put while he went to check it out. About 10 minutes passed, and Ethan still hadn't returned. I got out of the truck to check the situation. Unexpectedly, I heard a sound behind me. Before I could react, a strong force grabbed me from behind. Someone covered my mouth with a cloth that smelled strongly of chemicals. I was completely panicked. I tried to struggle and scream, but the more I screamed, the more of the chemicals I breathed in. I heard Ethan yelling from a distance, and in the next second, I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I panicked. I was lying naked on the forest floor. I was covered in scratches and bruises. It was dark, and the cold wind blew sharply across my skin. I couldn't clearly remember where I was or what had happened while I was unconscious. I called out Ethan's name in fear, and I was overjoyed to hear him answer. Ethan was lying a short distance from me. He was also naked and covered in wounds. Blood was running down from his forehead. When we found each other, we just held on tight and cried. He said there was a group of people wearing black robes. He thought it was a satanic cult. They had stolen everything. He tried to fight them, but couldn't. Everything happened too fast. But having him there made me feel a little less scared. We started walking for a while, hoping the spot wasn't too far from the main road. After walking for some time, it was still pitch black all around us. Ethan thought we needed to find shelter first. If we kept going, we would just get more lost and suffer terribly from the cold. Suddenly, Ethan spotted a canvas bag hidden behind a large rock. Inside, there were canned food, a knife, a lighter, and 2 sleeping bags. Ethan suggested that the people had forgotten these items. After we found a safe and warm spot, we ate some food. We encouraged each other, believing we would be able to get out of there the next day. But contrary to what we thought, we were stuck in the woods for many days. I was desperate and couldn't stop crying. I kept asking why God would let this happen to us. There were times when I just wanted to lie down and wait to die. But Ethan wouldn't let me give up. He hugged me, wiped my tears, and said we would get through this. He built a makeshift shelter using branches and the canvas bag. Every night, he sat guard to make sure no wild animals or those people came back. He tried to keep my spirits up. He told funny stories and sang hymns. I saw how exhausted he was. The wound on his forehead was getting infected. Ethan ate very little, always giving the food to me. On the 4th day, I ran a high fever. My body wouldn't stop shaking, even wrapped tightly in the sleeping bag. Ethan held me all night, using his body heat to keep me warm. He whispered prayers. I was touched, secretly thinking this was real love. The next morning, my fever broke, but then Ethan caught a fever. Ethan suggested I keep him warm the way he had done for me the previous night. Of course, I didn't refuse. He held me close, his hand gently stroking my arm and back. Lena, after everything that happened, do you still think we should wait until we get married? What do you mean? God put us together. You and I went through this together. This must be God's will, so I cherish you and our love even more. But I will not change my mind, Ethan. Ethan went silent and stopped all his actions after my reply. After a while, he fell asleep, surely from pure exhaustion. I also quickly drifted off to sleep. On the 6th day, we were almost completely desperate. The food was gone, and we were both severely dehydrated. Luckily, we were rescued. A hunter found us. He called the police, and we were immediately taken to the hospital. Fortunately, both of our health recovered quickly. There were no serious problems. We video called all the time to update each other on how we were doing. On the 3rd afternoon after being rescued, 2 police officers came to see me. They asked me about everything that had happened, especially the bag of supplies that Ethan found by accident. They showed me the purchase receipt and security camera footage of Ethan buying everything himself 3 weeks earlier. Then they showed me photos of the scene. There was absolutely no evidence that anyone else besides Ethan and me had been there. They checked the wound on his forehead. It didn't look like it was caused by an impact. It looked like he had intentionally hit his head on something, perhaps a tree trunk. Seeing that I had no reaction, they continued and showed me a video recording of the interrogation. Ethan sat in the interrogation room crying and confessing everything. Ethan had planned it for weeks. I love her too much. I thought if we went through something extreme together, if I saved her, she would see that we belonged together. There would be no reason left to wait. I didn't mean to hurt her. I just wanted us to be closer. I immediately turned off the video. I couldn't listen anymore. I thought we had survived a nightmare through love. But the truth was, I had been living in a terrible play orchestrated by Ethan for a disgusting purpose. Ethan had to face the appropriate sentence, and I was left with deep psychological trauma. The days that followed were truly awful, but my parents were always by my side, caring about every emotion and thought I had. After a few months, I was doing better, but that doesn't mean I was completely over it. People say the most painful thing isn't being betrayed, but realizing you were never truly loved. What I thought was love was just carefully disguised manipulation. And the most horrible thing is that I'm ashamed to admit that I still remember the feeling of being held by Ethan on the night I had a high fever. My body still remembers that warmth, even though I know it was also part of his plan. The music was ear-splitting. My body started moving on its own, joining the packed dance floor. I'm Hal, 26, and that day was supposed to be special. We were at some brand new club in downtown Columbus. Mike had picked the place, supposedly a premium music experience, in a uniquely designed venue. Even Alex, who usually hated crowded spots, came along just for me. The club was huge, but something about it made my skin crawl. Maybe it was the dim hallways or weird little corners in the old building, a factory back in the 1950s. Or maybe it was how the lights kept flickering, plunging the place into brief darkness every few seconds. And then suddenly, it went completely black. The music cut off. Pitch black darkness swallowed everything. At first, people laughed nervously or murmured in confusion. A few folks flipped on their phone flashlights, casting eerie spots in the gloom. I realized I was gripping Alex's shoulder. Mike was nowhere to be seen. The air grew thick, heavy, suffocating. 10 minutes dragged by. Still no power. An uneasy feeling crept over me. And then I heard it. A soft sob. It started faint, easy to mistake for background noise. But it got clearer, louder, raw, and desperate. My grip tightened on Alex's shoulder, but before I could whisper my anxiety, a piercing scream split the air. My whole body jolted, goosebumps everywhere, heart hammering like it might explode out of my chest. Weirdly enough, no one else around me seemed to hear it. The flashlight on my phone still cut through the darkness. I stood frozen, straining to separate that scream from the rest of the noise. I grabbed Alex and pulled him toward the sound. Around us, the crowd was getting restless from the blackout. People were shouting, others desperately searching for exits. In the chaos, Alex slipped from my grip. I shouted his name, but it was useless. Another scream pierced the air, louder this time and closer. It came from one of those shadowy hallways I'd noticed earlier. I moved toward it, my phone's flashlight beam guiding my way. The corridor was narrow and endless, lined with closed doors. The air turned colder, like I'd stepped into another dimension entirely. No one else was down here. This place probably wasn't meant for visitors. At the far end, a door stood slightly open, dim light spilling through the gap. My pace slowed, my heart thudding so loud I could hear it pounding in my ears. As I got closer, a pungent, fishy odor filled my nostrils. Curiosity, or maybe reckless stupidity, pushed me onward. My hands shook as I nudged the door open. Inside was a cramped storage room. In the corner, someone knelt with their back to me. In front of them lay a motionless body, blood pooling darkly on the floor. I just stood there, frozen. Slowly the man turned around, and I recognized Mike's face immediately. But his eyes, they were hollow, wild, and he had a knife in his hand, dripping bright red. It all happened fast, like some twisted nightmare. Mike rose slowly, staring right at me, and started walking toward me, knife still clutched tight, leaving red droplets trailing behind him. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But my body refused to move. My feet felt like they were nailed to the damn floor. Suddenly, a flashlight beam sliced through the darkness from behind me, and Alex's familiar voice echoed down the hallway. Mike stopped in his tracks. His eyes cleared slowly, like he was snapping out of a trance. He stared at the knife in his hand, then down at the motionless figure on the floor, and a look of absolute horror spread across his face. He dropped to his knees, letting the knife fall to the ground with a clatter, and started mumbling incoherently. As I cautiously stepped closer, I finally made out what he kept repeating. It told me to do it. It told me to do it. Suddenly, the lights surged back on, blinding us. Music boomed again from the main dance area, and the cheers and laughter outside felt disturbingly out of place compared to the horror unfolding in front of me. In that moment, I finally recognized the man lying on the ground, James Morrow. He'd been all over the news recently, especially because of Mike's family. 2 years ago, James had raped and murdered Mike's sister, but walked free due to a lack of evidence. Mike had been secretly tracking him ever since, and now, by some sick twist of fate, they'd both ended up at this club, on my birthday of all nights. I stood there, numb, watching my best friend kneeling next to the man who had destroyed his life. The screams still rang inside my head. I couldn't even tell if they were James's, Mike's, or just echoes in my own mind. Distant sirens pierced the night, growing louder. All I could do was watch helplessly as Mike, panicked and trembling, was led away, and Alex stared back at me, eyes wide with shock. My 26th birthday had become a nightmare I'd never forget. I am Emma, a 14-year-old high school student living in the peaceful suburbs of Denver. The story I'm about to tell has changed the way I see the world forever. I never expected that my friendship with Nona, my closest friend, would lead to a horrific tragedy. Nona is the type of person every girl would want to be friends with. She was beautiful, smart, and so friendly that both teachers and students adored her. At the end of October last year, Nona even received the Student of the Year award, and I felt incredibly lucky to have such a friend by my side. My parents were also very pleased that I had such a good friend, and they often said that Nona was a role model. Nona had suffered before achieving the perfect life she had now, and I believed that was the motivation that pushed her to strive every day. According to Nona, her childhood was a nightmare. Nona's biological father was a tyrannical and abusive man who would often beat her and her mother whenever he got angry. Nona said that she and her mother lived a life of being punching bags, with the sound of yelling and bruises being a familiar part of their home, which felt like a hellish space. Things only changed when her mother left the abusive marriage and remarried her stepfather. Nona said that he loved both her and her mother deeply, bringing them the peace they had never known. A girl as perfect as she seemed was expected to have a happy life, but everything changed when we entered 9th grade. Nona changed in a way that nobody could understand. He started acting strangely. One time, the homeroom teacher caught Nona secretly taking a photo of the test paper from the drawer, something no one would expect from the top student of the year. Not stopping there, Nona even punched Mr. John, the math teacher, straight on the head and ran away, then jumped from the second-floor hallway down to the schoolyard. Another time, she drank an entire bottle of hand sanitizer right in front of her classmates. These actions left me and my friends in shock. I felt worried but didn't dare to ask Nona about the reason. I also realized that they had started using drugs. That left everyone who had ever known Nona, including my parents, in shock. They forbade me from continuing to be friends with Nona, but I couldn't abandon them. Still, I didn't know how to help them. Nona, once a perfect girl, was now avoided and shunned by everyone. One weekend, Nona texted me, Christe, the other close friend in our group of 3, and several other classmates, asking us to come to her house immediately because something urgent had come up. When I asked if we should call the police, Nona immediately refused, saying that we just needed to get there as quickly as possible. In the end, only Chris and I showed up. When we arrived, Nona was standing in the front yard with a strange half-smile on her face. She asked us a very strange question, whether we had ever seen a dead body. Both Chris and I shivered, but we still followed Nona into the house. On the floor, Nona's mother lay motionless, her face disfigured and covered in red, with 3 bullet wounds. I screamed in panic, while Krista began to cry, her whole body trembling. But Nona just stood there, calm, as if nothing was out of the ordinary. I shot her 3 times, and my stepfather is about to return. My next target is him. I wanted to run, but my whole body was trembling, and my throat was tightly closed, unable to utter a single word. And what was even more terrifying was that Krista and I knew that Nona was holding a gun. Nona told us to hide in the backyard until she completed her plan. Like a machine controlled by pure fear, Krista and I nodded and quickly followed the instructions. Both Krista and I cried. A lot. We were trembling so much that we couldn't think about leaving or calling the police. About 15 minutes later, Nona's stepfather returned. The stepfather didn't have time to react as Nona rushed to attack. The gunshots rang out, followed by screams of pain and his stunned shock. He was hit but luckily escaped to a corner and called the police. I heard him scream into the phone, his voice trembling with desperation. The sound of police sirens echoed from afar, and Nona knew that time was running out. He ran out the back door, with Krista pulling me to follow. But the police had surrounded the house. They arrested Nona right in the backyard, handcuffed them, and put her in the car. Krista and I were also detained to serve as witnesses. Everything felt like a nightmare, and I couldn't stop crying when I thought about what had happened. In the following weeks, I had to attend court hearings and provide testimony. Seeing Nona in the courtroom, I was reminded of the cold smile on their face that day. After several months, the court sentenced Nona to life imprisonment. Every night, I still dream of Nona's mother lying on the floor with a bloodied face and Nona's terrifying smile. I blame myself for not doing anything to help Nona when she started to change, but now, the only thing I can do is learn to live with this haunting. I know that nightmare will haunt me forever. The story is based on a real event that occurred in March 2024, with the perpetrator being a 14-year-old girl named Carly. Born into an unhappy family with an abusive father, this became the negative foundation that influenced Carly's thoughts and personality later in life. When Carly and her mother, Ashley, escaped from the abusive husband, Ashley kept a legally registered gun for protection in case her ex-husband came looking for trouble. But that very gun ended up leading Ashley into tragedy, caused by none other than her own daughter, Carly. Carly was sentenced to life imprisonment with 3 charges of first-degree murder, attempted first-degree murder, and intentional destruction of evidence. Thus, the life that seemed to hold promise for a girl who had endured so much pain ended in a heartbreaking result. The case still sparks a lot of controversy due to the smile and the suggestive gaze exchanged between Carly and her stepfather during the trial. Many question whether the stepfather played a role in causing the tragedy. The story serves as a lesson for all parents to pay more attention to and educate their children with greater care and discipline. My name is David. I was born and raised in the suburbs of San Bernardino, California. Our house was an old wooden one, isolated among the deep green pine hills. It was quite spacious with 4 bedrooms and a basement. My father said the basement was where he worked. I was never allowed down there. I accepted this without question. I only observed from a safe distance. I lived with my father, a very quiet man. With his fishing job, he was often away for weeks at a time. Dad didn't spend much time with me. The only thing he taught me was, women only bring trouble. But the contradiction was that our house always had many women visiting. They came and went like ghosts, so many that I couldn't remember them all. When Dad was away, I stayed home with whichever woman was visiting at the time. They rarely spoke to me. Some looked at me with pity, others with coldness. None of them cooked. I usually lived on canned goods and sandwiches. In the winter when I was 7, Bree appeared with long curly brown hair and a warm smile. Dad introduced her as a special friend who would be staying with us. I didn't expect much, but Bree was different. The first morning after she arrived, I woke up to the smell of pancakes and bacon. I was so used to preparing my own breakfast of dry cereal, the aroma confused me. I crept into the kitchen. Bree turned with a bright smile and said, "Good morning, David." It was the first time I had the feeling of a real family meal. Bree sat across from me. She asked about school, about the books I liked. She really listened to my answers. The following months passed peacefully. Bree took me to school and picked me up. She helped me with my homework and cooked amazing meals. Bree's specialty was barbecue with a secret sauce. "This is my exclusive recipe," she would often say, as she poured the dark red sauce over the tender meat. I ate heartily, without any suspicion. The strange thing was that even with Bree staying, other women continued to come. They didn't stay as long as before, usually just a night or two, when my father was home. Bree never spoke about them. Gradually, I stopped paying attention to their comings and goings. To me, Bree was mom, the only one I needed. One night, I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of arguing from the kitchen. For the first time, I heard Bree's voice high and strained. "You knew what you were doing when you came here. Don't act innocent with me." My father's voice was harsh. "But I didn't think things would be like this," Bree retorted. "You want to leave, like the others?" my father asked. Silence stretched, and finally, I heard Bree sob softly. "Number, I can't leave David." "Then you'll do as I say." My father's voice was firm. 2 days later, we had barbecue for dinner again. Bree didn't say much, but she made sure my plate was always full. I ate ravenously, while Bree barely touched her own portion. That night, I woke up thirsty and went downstairs to get a drink. The basement door was slightly ajar, no sound, but there was a strange smell I couldn't place. Curious, I crept closer to the basement stairs. I intended to look down to see what my father did down there in the middle of the night. Suddenly, a gentle hand touched my shoulder. "Go back to bed, David. Your father is working." "We shouldn't disturb him," Bree whispered. Her face was pale and distraught. I nodded and went back to my room. When Bree tucked me in, I noticed her eyes were red and swollen. From that night on, Bree changed. Her smile no longer held any emotion. She grew thinner, with dark circles under her eyes and trembling hands. Sometimes I would catch her staring blankly into space and secretly crying. I started hearing noises at night, not arguing anymore, but strange sounds from the basement. Sometimes it was the clanging of metal and even whimpering. Once I was sure I heard a scream, but it was abruptly cut short. The next day, I saw Bree with a pale face, and after those nights, we would have barbecue for dinner again. I had realized something. Every time a new woman arrived and left, we would have barbecue. My father would seem more cheerful, while Bree wouldn't meet our eyes during the meal. I didn't want to eat those barbecue dinners anymore, but I didn't dare refuse. Bree noticed when my father wasn't looking. She would give me a small nod, allowing me to leave some food on my plate. One day, while I was at school, a police officer and a social worker came to my classroom. They took me to the principal's office and asked me about my father and life at home. I answered cautiously, unsure of what I should say. When they asked about the women, I froze. I repeated what my father had always told me. They were friends visiting. "What about Bree?" the police officer asked. "Bree is my foster mom." The two officers exchanged a look. Then they said they would take me home. When we arrived, several police cars were parked in front of the house. Bree stood on the porch, her face streaked with tears. When she saw me, she ran and hugged me tightly. Before I could understand what was happening, I saw my father being led out of the house. He was wearing handcuffs, his eyes looking down at the ground, empty and emotionless. I heard a police officer say they had to call for more units. There were over 50 bodies down there. Everything after that became a blur. I remember someone putting me in a car, Bree begging to come with me. I looked out the window as men in protective suits went in and out of the basement. They were carrying large black bags. That sentence kept echoing in my head as a police officer explained that my father had murdered at least 50 women. He had butchered their bodies, taking what he considered the best parts. The barbecue dinners, they all flashed through my mind with horrifying clarity. I vomited until there was nothing left. Painful contractions and choked sobs overwhelmed me. Bree had helped my father. She had cooked those meals. But she had also called the police. The following years passed in a series of foster homes and mental health facilities. I didn't speak for almost a year, unable to eat meat. My father was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bree was sentenced to 20 years in prison for her role as an accomplice, although she had cooperated with the police. I never visited either of them. Now, I'm 28 years old and trying to build a normal life. I have a small apartment in Sacramento, a job at the local library. I don't have nightmares as often as I used to, but they still come. In those dreams, I always see myself as a 10-year-old boy sitting at the dining table. I stare at a steaming plate of barbecue. My father smiles encouragingly. Bree stands behind me, tears streaming down her face. And from the basement, I hear the cries of nameless women.
I'm Cecilia, 32, happily married with a husband and a 6-year-old. On my way to grab my kid from school, he was all pumped up seeing the streetlights for the biggest holiday of the year. But for me, the scariest time of year is coming up. Christmas, 25 years ago. I was the same age my kid is now. That day was Christmas, my 6th birthday, and the day I lost it all. I also had a happy family with my folks and my brother. We lived in Miles City, Runnels County, Texas. That Christmas night, I couldn't sleep at all. My mother told me that I was a special child, that Santa would give me Christmas presents and birthday presents. My mom told me I was a special kid, that Santa would hook me up with Christmas and birthday presents. Out of nowhere, I heard a noise from the roof. I straight up jumped up and ran to my parents' room. "Dad, Mom, Santa's here. I hear footsteps on the roof." Mom put the book down, looked at me, gave me a little smile, and then took me to my room. "Honey, Santa will bring you presents if you go to bed on time. Deal?" I nodded at Mom, jumped into bed, threw the blanket over me, and shut my eyes. Then I remembered something and quickly told my mom, "Mom, don't forget to leave chocolate milk and cookies out for Santa when he drops off the gifts." Mom laughed, patted my head, and nodded. When Mom left, I hesitated for a sec, then jumped out of bed, tiptoed to the stairs, and peeked down. Yep, Mom had left cookies and milk on the dining table. As Mom walked past the front door, she reached out to lock it and yelled at Dad for being careless. Before Mom went upstairs, I had enough time to dash into my room and hop back in bed. I laid in bed for a bit, but I couldn't sleep. The noise just kept getting louder and louder. I totally forgot what Mom said, so I left my room again, went to the stairs, and peeked down at the living room. The dark figure just vanished, heading to the dining room. It was someone every kid in the world knows and waits for: Santa Claus. I ran to my brother's room, trying to wake him up. Jeffrey, Santa's in the kitchen. Wake up!" My brother was still out cold, so not wanting to miss Santa, I rushed downstairs. As soon as I got close to the living room, Santa was standing by the tree, getting ready to pull a gift out of his bag. But nope. It was a tool for chopping wood. I knew, because my dad had shown it to me once. The thing Santa was holding was different. It was red and long. He slung it over his shoulder, gave a little smile, and slowly turned around. My excitement quickly turned into nerves. I just froze, because this Santa was way different from what I imagined. His laugh freaked me out, so I quickly ducked behind the stairs before he walked by. Back then, being an innocent 6-year-old, I just stood there watching, not knowing I'd just come face to face with the devil. He headed up to my brother's room. After a few seconds, I heard sounds I couldn't even explain back then. I just stood there, stunned. But later, I realized it was the sound of something brutal. It was the sticky sound, Santa's creepy laugh, and the sound of liquid dripping and splashing everywhere. Santa walked out, and I could see his face. It was so weird. No long white beard, just a pale face, black lips and eyes, and a big creepy smile, and a long, pointy nose with a black dot at the tip. No gift bag, just him humming with a creepy smile, walking around still holding that wood-cutting tool, dripping red stuff everywhere. He went into his parents' room, and then I heard my dad let out a weak scream for a sec. Then that sticky sound came back, and this time it was way clearer. Then my mom screamed, and I'd never heard her scream that loud before. "Jeffrey!" My mom yelled my brother's name, but didn't call mine. "Jeffrey!" She busted open my brother's door, then screamed like she was in pain and totally freaked out. Mom was followed by Santa, and his arms, his face, everything was just covered in red. Mom was about to head to my room, but then switched directions and ran downstairs. At that moment, I was thinking, didn't Mom remember me? Didn't she care where I was? As soon as Mom got close to me, Santa swung the axe at her back. I saw the whole thing, every single hit. Mom's screams and last words were just her calling out my brother's name. My heart was racing, and I barely had time to turn around and run for the kitchen. I didn't think twice, just yanked open the cupboard, crawled in, and tried to stay as quiet as possible, shaking while I heard footsteps getting closer. I peeked through the crack in the cupboard door and saw Santa happily munching on cookies and sipping milk. He was sucking on his bright red fingers, looking all refreshed and grinning like he was loving it. After he finished the cookies and milk, he washed the plate and cup, then left with a creepy laugh. The next day, my grandma found me, and there were a bunch of police at the house. Grandma hugged me so tight, I could feel her holding back tears. "Thank God for protecting my Cecilia." On the wall next to the Christmas tree, I spelled out each letter in bright red. SANTACLOWN. It's been 25 years, and they still haven't figured out who that Santa was. I get why my mom went into the room, and why she only called my brother's name. In that moment, my mom wanted Santa to think there was only one kid in the house, my brother. I was scared of the color red, scared of that guy in the red suit and black boots, scared of the noises at night, the footsteps, the sound of running water. I've never been able to forget or shake off the terror of that night.
I'm Martin, 33 years old, living in Houston, USA. I have a job with a high income in exchange for a busy work schedule. I've experienced many hotels from budget to luxury, but my hotel experience during a business trip to New York 3 years ago still haunts me. I arrived at the budget hotel at 11 p.m. I didn't have much time to choose a place to stay. The receptionist told me there was only one room left in Area B. There were 2 rooms on that floor. She told me to avoid disturbing the room with the red sign, S1302, next to it, because that was the place the young couple rented for a fixed period of 1 month. I was very tired after a long flight, so I didn't pay attention to that room. I had a 4-day business trip here. The first night went smoothly. I slept very well. The next day, I finished work and returned to the hotel at 8 p.m. After showering and changing into comfortable pajamas, I lay on the bed to relax. Suddenly, giggles rang out in the next room, which was the young couple's room. Then there were moans. They were probably having fun. I put on headphones, turned on the music quite loudly, and fell asleep after that. On the third night, screams and slightly crazy laughter rang out, startling me awake. Looking at the phone clock, it was 12 o'clock. I'm quite uncomfortable because work is stressful all day long, so I really need to get enough sleep. I called the front desk to complain and wanted them to remind the couple to limit such noises. I regret renting a hotel with such poor soundproofing quality. It took 10 minutes for the laughter to stop, and it took me a long time to fall asleep again. The next day I felt tired and went to meet my business partner. The last night I returned to the hotel at 10 p.m. Tomorrow morning I will go home to rest. But this last night was truly more terrible than the previous nights. Because I had drunken a lot of coffee during the day, I have difficulty sleeping. It was nearly 11 o'clock when I heard footsteps running in the hallway. Why are they still making noise when I already responded to the receptionist? I approached the door, intending to directly remind the couple because they were outside anyway. But as soon as I opened the door and walked out, a woman wearing a thin nightgown covering her feet, long black hair hanging down, eyes staring lifelessly. In her hand, she held a sharp, dirty knife straight towards me. I immediately retreated into my room and avoided it. She still maintained that position and ran past. I followed her with my eyes, even though I was very scared. She suddenly stopped, twisted her neck, and made a cracking sound and looked straight back at me. I panicked and quickly locked the door. My whole body trembled. My mind was dizzy and panicked. I was about to call the receptionist when there was a knock on my door. I felt like my heart lost a beat. It took me a few seconds to calm down, but that knocking sound continued. I held my breath, slowly turned around and looked through the peephole. What caught my eye was the image of the woman just standing and staring at the door. The creepy smile on her thin face sent chills down my spine. I didn't know what to do next. Suddenly, a man's loud, angry scream rang out. Then his arm held something and swung it strongly towards the woman. Blood caught on my door, covering the peephole, a dark red color and a fishy smell. I covered my mouth tightly, not daring to scream. I don't remember whether I walked or crawled to the hotel desk phone. I tried my best to put it into words. I asked the receptionist, the security guard, the manager, anyone to come to my room immediately. The hotel manager and staff were present, and nearby tenants ran in panic and gossip. On the floor right in front of my room, a woman lay in a pool of blood. The receptionist confirmed that this is the wife who rented 1302. About 10 minutes later, the police arrived and sealed off the scene. The police asked the receptionist to use the spare key to open the door to room 1302. In the room, there was a horrifying scene with blood, syringes, ropes, sharp knives, and a very strong smell. Lying on the sofa was the body of a man with a long cut on his neck, still bleeding, and a knife clutched tightly in his hand. According to police investigation, the man and woman were Jax and Jesse, their husband and wife. The hotel room is a place they rented to satisfy their drug addiction. The hotel receptionist was also bribed by the couple. Days of constant drug use make them mad and lose all self-control. Jax murdered his wife, and then he went back to his room and committed suicide. I asked the hotel to move me to another room and booked my plane ticket for the earliest flight home.
I'm Logan, 36. Moved back to my hometown in Texas after over 10 years of living in other states and trying out all kinds of jobs. Started everything from scratch, but it's all good. I'm fine and feeling optimistic about it all. For the past 3 months, I've been working at a Circle K near my place, doing both gas station attendant and cashier stuff in the store. The job's not hard, but it eats up almost my whole day. Sometimes I make mistakes when I'm working late for long stretches, or when the gas station and store get packed. I told my boss we should hire someone else so we can split shifts. A week after putting up the job ad, the store got a new employee named Benny. He's 7 years younger than me, tall and skinny, with green eyes under a mess of hair. He's really into his old Converse, worn out soles and covered in layers of dust. He always walked heavy, shoulders hunched, looking like a human clothes hanger. He always smelled kind of burnt. Wasn't bad, but it threw people off. Benny was quiet, just a few words to customers like hello and thanks. Even though Benny looked and acted kind of odd, his work attitude was solid, always on time and really detailed. Since Benny showed up, my job's been a little easier. But trouble hit after just 2 weeks. The store started noticing stuff going missing. Not sure when this started, but I only noticed when the stock and sales numbers were way off. So I told the boss. Benny and I are the first ones to take the fall for this. The boss just stayed calm when he heard what I had to say. There are security cameras in the store. Can you check the footage from the last 5 days to see if anything's weird? You're off tonight and I'll pay you full. That's what the boss offered, and I had no reason to say no. Maybe I had been working for a long time, so he decided to trust me. Yep, Benny's weirdness made people around him feel like he was unpredictable. That night I just chilled, did some stuff around the house and ate. Then I crashed on the couch, popped open my laptop, and started checking the footage. 9:30, August 26th. Benny was at the register, messing with some random stuff. A few minutes later, a customer walked in. Anna. I know her. She's a regular. Anna grabbed a bottle of shower gel and a magazine. As soon as she left, another guy walked in. A tall, brown dude. He grabbed something. I zoomed in and saw it was a bottle of engine oil. For the next 20 minutes, no more customers came in, and Benny just stood at the register, not moving. I started yawning, and my eyes were getting super heavy. I left the laptop and pulled out my phone to scroll through a shopping site. It wasn't until I heard a noise that I remembered I was actually getting paid for this, and focused back on it. Benny was arranging stuff in the freezer section. I watched him closely, and he wasn't doing anything weird. The customer bell rang again. Yep, it was Anna. She probably forgot something. Happens all the time. Shower gel in the magazine, I muttered when I saw what Anna was bringing to the counter. I was curious, but then I figured everyone's got their own thing they're into. As soon as Anna left, a tall guy with brown skin walked in. "Wait!" I yelled, sitting up straight. Earlier, must have just been a coincidence. He probably wanted to buy something else," I mumbled. I was watching every move of that brown-skinned guy, and then, "Engine oil?" I said, reaching out to pause and zoom in to double-check. I got up, walked to the fridge, poured a glass of cold water and drank it all. I was more awake, went back to the couch, put the laptop on my lap, and focused on watching. For the next 20 minutes, Benny was back to cleaning around. While he was by the freezer, the alarm went off again. I widened my eyes to see the customer coming in. "Anna?" I froze, my heart racing as she walked over to the toiletries counter. A bottle of shower gel and a magazine. That's what she had when she came to the register. I ran my hands through my hair and squeezed. I couldn't say a word, just stayed like that, letting the pain remind me that was real. As soon as Anna left, the brown guy showed up again. My heart was racing. "Please, please, please," I silently begged him not to grab another bottle of engine oil. But what I wanted and what the guy did were totally different. What the hell is going on? I yelled when I saw what the guy bought for the third time. I looked at the time on the screen. It was still 9:30. I clicked on any part of the recording, and it still showed the same time. I slammed the laptop shut, ran to my room, locked the door, and stared at the clock all night, making sure time was actually moving. As soon as it was daylight, I was both excited and panicked, rushing to the store. Benny didn't show up to work today, and the boss couldn't get a hold of him either. I played the recording for him to see. Once again, the boss and I were stuck in some crazy time loop. The only people we could count on at that point were the police. While we waited for the police to figure things out, the boss and I took turns running the store and the gas station. I was always distracted, just constantly staring at the clock. 2 days after the boss reported it, the police showed up at the store. Based on what you told us, we looked into this young guy named Benny Mason. He's 27. The address he put on his resume is your store. Didn't you catch that? 6 years ago, this place was home to a family of 6. Sadly, the house caught fire and everyone inside died. The oldest son in the house was the only one they couldn't find. When the police checked the tape again, they noticed something weird. With each loop, Benny's shadow on the floor kept getting shorter until it just disappeared.
My name is Gail, and I was 12 years old when this happened. Summer in our small Arizona town was always hot and quiet. My parents worked all day, leaving my 6-year-old sister Emma and me at home. Our single-story wooden house sat at the end of a long driveway, surrounded by tall oak trees. That day, it was around 2 p.m. Emma was lying on the living room rug, watching cartoons, while I sat at the kitchen table doing my homework. Our dog, Lucky, was sleeping by the back door, tongue lolling out from the heat. A loud banging at the front door startled me. It wasn't a polite knock, but heavy thumps. Emma turned her head to look at me. "Sarah, someone's at the door." I stopped my homework and walked into the living room. Through the window beside the front door, I saw a strange man standing outside, staring at us. His face and attire were so contrasting that I still remember them clearly. He was dressed neatly, but his face was covered in a thick, bushy beard. He held a pink briefcase with Mickey Mouse on it, which looked very eye-catching. When he saw me looking intently, the man smiled, pointing at the briefcase in his hand. I couldn't tear my eyes away from it, partly because of its bright color, partly because I kept wondering, why would a grown man carry a child's briefcase? I didn't open the door. Mom had told us never to open the door for strangers when no adults were home. The man continued to wave, smiling. He pointed to the briefcase, then pointed to the door, as if to say he had something for us. "Sarah, what does he want?" Emma came over to me, her voice trembling. "I don't know. Stay away from the door." I pulled my sister back, my eyes still fixed on the outside. The man stood there for a few more minutes, then suddenly turned away. I thought he was leaving, but no. He walked along the side path of the house, heading towards the back. My heart pounded. I ran into the kitchen, looking through the back window. The man had reached the back door, standing right outside the wooden steps. He placed the briefcase on the ground, then grabbed the doorknob. Lucky sprang up, fur bristling, barking loudly. The doorknob was violently rattled. The door shook, but luckily, Mom always locked it securely whenever she left. The man stopped, looking into the house through the back door's glass. His eyes met mine. He smiled, then gestured with his hand for me to open the door. "No." I shook my head hard. He continued to gesture, this time more urgently. Why did he want to enter our house? Why wasn't he saying anything? Emma ran to me, clutching my arm tightly. "Sarah, I'm scared." Lucky barked incessantly, constantly lunging towards the back door. The man didn't seem afraid or annoyed by the barking. He just stood there, patiently gesturing for me to open the door. I ran to the landline phone in the living room. With the mind of a 12-year-old, I wondered whether to call Mom or the police first. Suddenly, Emma burst into loud sobs. I couldn't even make the call. I quickly dropped the phone and ran to my sister. I hugged her, trying to comfort her. Looking back at the man, he had pressed his face against the door, his smile wider now, his hand still waving. I tried to make my voice loud and clear. I've already called the police. They're on their way. Through the glass, I saw the man stop gesturing. He tilted his head, as if listening. Then he gave a chilling laugh, as if he knew I was lying. He continued to stand there looking into the house with patient eyes, as if he could wait all day. Suddenly, I remembered. Grandma was on her way to visit us. She would be here around 3 p.m. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 2:45 p.m. I quickly pulled Emma back into the living room to call Grandma. My voice trembled as I told her about the strange man. Listen carefully. You and Emma run to the back bedroom right now. Lock the door, and Grandma will be there soon. I did exactly as she said. We ran into Mom and Dad's bedroom in the back of the house, and I locked the door. Emma crawled onto the bed, while I sat close to the door, listening. Lucky was still barking, but now the barks were less frequent. 5 minutes stretched like an eternity. Finally, I heard the engine of Grandma's car. The car door slammed shut. Footsteps on the pathway. Sarah! Emma! Grandma's voice echoed from the front. I opened the bedroom door, ran out, and hugged her tightly, crying loudly. Grandma kept asking if my sister and I were okay, and she checked to see if either of us was hurt. She quickly ushered us inside, locked the door, and called the police. My parents also rushed home. There were no signs that he had tried to break in. The back doorknob wasn't damaged. There were no footprints in the soft earth under the windows. The police concluded the man likely had mental health issues. The man never returned. It's been 11 years since that day, and I still vividly remember his smile. And I still wonder, what was in that pink briefcase? Why did he want to enter our house? Some questions never get answers.
I'm Charity, just starting college. I started working part-time in my second semester to make some extra cash for tuition and living expenses. My parents said they could afford it, but I was stubborn and pretty independent, so I always did my own thing. My first job was working as a sales clerk at Target. I was excited when I got the job, but that excitement didn't last long when I saw the schedule. I had to work 2 night shifts a week. Since the store had to handle a ton of holiday shoppers, it was pretty much open 24/7. I wasn't a fan of the whole night shift thing at all. The quiet and darkness always freaked me out a bit, but I told myself I needed the money, and it was a chance to get used to adulting. On my first night working the night shift, I went to the store feeling both excited and nervous. The store at night felt totally different from during the day. The shelves were all neat, and the soft yellow lights from the ceiling were spread out, but the silence made it feel like everything was frozen. I started my shift like usual, fixing things customers left in the wrong spot, cleaning the shelves, and checking the stock. Everything was going pretty smoothly, nothing too crazy. Time dragged on, and by the time it hit midnight, I was starting to feel worn out. Leaning on the cashier counter, I tried not to let my eyes shut. It was way too quiet, just the hum of the AC and a few customers strolling by. Out of nowhere, a guy walked up. He was wearing a white shirt, pants, and had his hair all neat and combed. He looked really put together, but his intense stare and serious face kind of made me feel uneasy. He introduced himself as the store manager and told me to head to the back to organize the stock. I hesitated since it was my first time meeting him, but his serious look made me too nervous to say no. I nodded and quickly headed to the warehouse like he asked. On my way, I ran into another guy coming toward me. He was in a store uniform and gave me a curious look. I told him what the manager asked me to do. His face totally changed in an instant. He took off the name tag around his neck, showing he was actually the real manager of the store. A chill ran down my spine. Who was that guy?
The manager told me to turn around and point out the other guy. As soon as we stepped into the main hall, the light suddenly went out. The whole store was swallowed up by darkness. In a split second, the quiet place turned into chaos. Customers were whispering, some were yelling, and it felt like pure panic. I just stood there in the dark, my heart racing, not sure what to do next. Then, there was a loud bang, a gunshot. I crouched down, my body shaking. I ducked low, trying to find somewhere to hide. My hand brushed against a shelf, so I crawled between the boxes and tried to stay quiet. In the dark, I could hear footsteps running, echoing all around. The screams, the sound of stuff crashing, and the brutal gunshots kept going, totally freaking me out. Sweat was dripping down my forehead and back, but I didn't dare move too much. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone. While trying to dial 911, I had to use both hands to keep the phone from slipping out of my grip. My voice was shaking, and I kept stumbling over my words as I explained what was going on. About 10 minutes later, I heard police sirens outside the store. The flashing red and blue lights peeked through the gaps in the shelves, giving me a bit of hope. But I still didn't dare move. I just had to sit there and wait. The police loudspeaker blared, telling everyone to stay calm and not move. I could hear their footsteps, their orders, and they started clearing each area. After about an hour, things started to calm down. I stepped out of my hiding spot, my legs shaking and my mind racing with fear. The police led the staff and customers out one by one. I found out that a group of young guys had planned to rob the store. The guy in the white shirt was their distraction, making it easy for them to carry out their plan. They used the darkness to grab phones, wallets, and valuables from customers. A few security guards got hurt trying to stop them, but luckily, no one died. 2 days later, the police caught the group of guys with help from security cameras and witness statements. I felt relieved that it was all over. But every time I closed my eyes, I could still hear gunshots, screams, and feel the darkness closing in on me. I was so shaken up that I couldn't go to the store or any crowded places to shop for years after that. It was a night I never wanted to go through again. Who would have thought my first shift would turn into such a nightmare?